Hello and welcome to the Adventures of George Washington. I am your host, Professor Worthington. It was January of 1780. George Washington and the portion of the Continental Army directly under his command was spending the bitterly cold winter in Morristown, New Jersey, where some of the soldiers reported eating tree bark and twigs to satisfy their hunger pains.
Mail's here!
In the stack of postage was a letter for General Washington from Philadelphia. It contained what he considered to be one of the greatest honors of his life.
I have just been given one of the greatest honors of my life. I have been elected into the American Philosophical Society.
Though most of his associates had always thought of him as a man of practical knowledge and never considered him to be a philosopher, Washington clarified his beliefs.
Yes, I have always felt inclined to be the friend and associate of men of virtue and philosophical knowledge.
The creed of the American Philosophical Society reflected these same ideas. Knowledge is of little use when confined to mere speculation, but when speculative truths are reduced to practice, when theories, grounded upon experiments, are applied to the common purposes of life, and when, by these, agriculture is improved, trade enlarged, the arts of living made more easy and comfortable, and of course, the increase and happiness of mankind promoted, knowledge then becomes really useful. That this society, therefore, may in some degree answer the ends of its institution, the members propose to confine their disquisitions, principally, to such subjects as tend to the improvement of their country and the advancement of its interest and prosperity. George Washington spent most of his life trying to gain knowledge for the purposes of improving himself and his society. Over his lifetime, he collected more than 1,200 books, pamphlets, journals, and other works in his personal library. While he has sometimes been criticized for not having the scholarly mind of men like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, he was in fact well informed, and he made abundant use of his library. Washington read the majority of the books he purchased, as well as reading the newspaper almost daily from his youth until his death. Many of the readings provided practical instruction on agricultural techniques, surveying methods, military maneuvers, governmental administration, and a great many other subjects in which he participated. Consistent with the Age of Enlightenment, Washington considered all of his occupations as sciences and referenced them as such in his conversations. As the proprietor of Mount Vernon, he participated in the science of agriculture and the science of husbandry. As the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, he practiced the military science, and later as President of the United States, he engaged in the science of government. Washington did not rely on books for his only source of knowledge. In each of his occupations, Washington conducted experiments to find true principles that would bring desired results. Most often, Washington used the experiential experimentation approach to scientific inquiry. As a man of action, he preferred the trial and error method. As the leader of the Continental Army, he experimented with diverse compensation packages to induce enlistments, different siege maneuvers during battle, alternative shipping routes in shallow waters, various building materials for forts, and new procedures for firing weapons. When an experiment did not produce the desired results, Washington knew that it would be impractical to do the exact same thing again. Failure, however, did not equal defeat. On the contrary, it provided valuable information on how to improve for the next encounter. He believed that the acceptance of failure required not only the fortitude of the soldier, but the calm reflection of the philosopher. Washington's willingness to learn from failure was one of his key leadership attributes. He even viewed American democracy as an experiment. While serving as the leader of the government, he said that the U.S. Constitution, with its checks and barriers against the introduction of tyranny, was a grand experiment offered to the people of America. To him, only the passage of time would reveal if American citizens had the courage and intelligence to deserve a democracy, or if they would become weak thinkers who needed a strong dictator to take care of them. While Washington frequently viewed almost every action he performed as an experiment, there were times that he performed traditional experiments where he controlled the variables and compared the results. For example, at Mount Vernon around 1788, he conducted an experiment using varying amounts of plaster of Paris, among other things, to grow oats. On 1 acre, he applied 1 bushel of his mixture. On the next, he applied 2 bushels, and so forth until the last acre had 20 bushels of the mixture. At the end of his experiment, he concluded that his mixture had no effect on crop yield either for better or worse. And during the Revolutionary War, he approved the building of laboratories for the purpose of making some experiments which may be of public utility. In 1780, Washington approved the construction of one of these laboratories for James J., brother of the first Chief Justice of the United States John Jay, who several years earlier had developed an invisible ink that was critical in the success of the Culper spy ring. One of his favorite outlets for philosophical inquiry and discussion was the American Museum, a magazine that he called important for the dissemination of political, agricultural, philosophical, and other valuable information. In its early years, when the publication was struggling to get subscribers, Washington offered to use the valuable influence of his reputation in a public endorsement of the magazine. Matthew Carey, the publisher, gladly accepted his offer and produced an advertisement in which Washington decreed that a more useful literary plan has never been undertaken in America or one more deserving public encouragement. Washington continued by proclaiming that the knowledge found in the American Museum would help to preserve the liberty, stimulate the industry, and ameliorate the morals of an enlightened and free people. During the magazine's 5 years of existence, Washington not only subscribed to it and endorsed it, but contributed articles as well. Many of his contributions were in the form of published speeches or state documents, but they also included letters in which he responded to questions from interested and engaged citizens. Although Washington's primary interest was the practical application of knowledge, he was delighted when he received academic recognition for his philosophical accomplishments. In 1789, when Harvard College announced that they were placing his portrait in their philosophy chamber, he wrote a letter to the university's president saying he was flattered to be considered among the patrons and promoters of science. Washington the philosopher was as practical as Washington the practitioner. For him, the purpose of philosophy was to teach wisdom that would enable us to bear with fortitude the most calamitous incidents of life, and not to give us answers to mysterious questions which had no immediate bearing on daily living. Philosophy meant the reflection upon principles that enabled citizens to be leaders in their communities. His multitude of letters and speeches referenced more than 50 principles that can be combined into 7 main categories: integrity, energy, courage, generosity, justice, wisdom, and temperance. Like a true Stoic warrior, Washington followed these principles in his daily life, and he believed that it was necessary for all citizens to follow similar principles if American democracy was to succeed. Thank you for watching. If you found the content useful or entertaining, please subscribe.